let us know where you're calling in from on the chat. Be great. But I think we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to today's National Careers Week Transform Our World youth event, Jobs for People and Planet. My name's Binah and I work at Global Action Plan, and I will be coordinating the event today. As everyone is aware, there is currently a lot going on in the world. Today is not only National Careers Week, but also it's International Women's Day. So happy International Women's Day, everyone, for today. We're living through really uncertain times. Obviously, there is the horrific situation in Ukraine with the recent outbreak of war. We've just lived through a global pandemic, as well as there recently being a report published by scientists emphasising the urgency of tackling climate change now and dealing with the climate crisis. However awful these situations are, and the world can be kind of a scary place at times, these uncertainties reiterate the need for change, and hopefully this event can play a role, albeit potentially a small one, in the series of kind of events happening, in inspiring you and other young people to think about your future, including your choice of career and how you can play a part in creating a better world for people and planet. So today we are running a panel style event where we're going to hear about lots of different roles in the careers sector and find out about potentially jobs that you might be interested in taking part in or pursuing in the future. So today we're joined by 5 panellists. We've got Daniela, who is the co-founder of Ecofye, an organisation that helps companies minimise their environmental impact. We've got Kit, who is senior climate advisor for the charity Save the Children UK. We're joined by Hannah, who is a coach and addiction specialist. We're joined by Ben, who is a housing development manager, and also by Luke, who is a community coach at Forest Green Rovers Football Club. And throughout this afternoon, our panellists will be bringing their various expertise to discussing what green jobs are, how any job can be green, and also how you can focus your skills and experience to get where you'd like to be in your career. Throughout the session, you as audience members will have the opportunity to ask questions to our panellists, so please do submit them using the Q&A function through this webinar. It'd be great to hear what your name is or your school, what your question is, and whether your question is aimed at an individual panellist or for all of our panellists. The panel are more than happy to answer any questions, so we'd love to hear from you. Just so you're aware, the event is being recorded and it'll be available to watch back in the future. But before we get started on the event and get started on questions to the panellists, we're just going to hand over to the panellists to introduce themselves. So Daniela, would you like to start? Just give us a bit of a background about who you are and what your role is.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for that, Binah. Thank you so much for everybody who joined the call and welcome. So my name is Daniela Arroyo Olson and I'm from Mexico originally, but I live in London. So my background is I did a master's in climate change and finance and also in machine learning at Imperial College London. And I'm currently the co-founder and CEO of Ecofye, which is a clean tech startup that is also based in London. And when I mention clean tech is we use technology in order to reduce the effects of climate change for companies. And well, Ecofye's job is all about assessing, monitoring, and transforming business as usual by automating every process. And of course, the reporting procedure, which makes also companies and users of our platform to reduce emissions, become greener, and of course, more efficient at what they do. Thank you. That's me.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to hand over to Kit now if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi there, I hope you can all hear me. So I'm Kit Vaughan, I'm the Senior Climate Advisor at Save the Children. We are a very large international humanitarian development charity with a specific focus on children, probably a bit late to the party on climate change, but really ramping up now. A lot of our work is focused around direct intervention support at country levels in terms of crisis work. So we're in the Ukraine, we're in Yemen, we're in the Sudan, etc. But also influencing at a policy level, but also influencing sort of private sector and different sort of companies and government roles. So trying to sort of work on a systems approach to climate change. My own background is I worked at WWF. I also worked at Care International, so quite a heavy focus on NGO charity sector. And I've also spent 20 years working in sub-Saharan Africa. And I also don't have any O levels and I don't have any A levels. So one of my key messages is don't let academia put you back. Look for the opportunities and the things that drive you and the passion that's going to take you forward. So happy to have this conversation later today.
Awesome, thank you. Hannah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Mute. Hi there, my name's Hannah Lindsell. Thank you for having me here today. My background is in addiction, so that's drugs, alcohol and tobacco addiction, where I spent 20 years variously on the front line working around homelessness hostels with women who were sex working around the King's Cross red light district in London, and work around Brent at night looking for homeless people, and then helping them to access accommodation, hostels, or access, get benefits or ID, or help them with like getting access to healthcare or substance use treatment. I then found myself writing some research. I'd gained quite a good understanding at that point of crack cocaine, and I wrote 2 research papers on crack cocaine. And then I found myself in the civil service, where I remained for a number of years, and I wasn't so happy there. I didn't feel so immediately connected to people or to helping people. And then I found coaching, and that helped me find that sweet spot between supporting people to make sustainable changes to their lives. Coaching is about helping someone get to where they want to be in the way they want to get there, and it's about helping them sustain that. So last year I left the civil service, and I'm now a full-time coach, and I offer career coaching to women, so helping people figure out what lights them up, what drives them, and what they want to do. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, thank you. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi there everyone. So I'm Ben Burton. I guess the main part is I'm a development manager, which is around the design, planning and construction of buildings. So for myself, that's primarily housing. So until recently, I was working at City of York Council on the development of zero carbon homes. So homes and construction in general accounts for about 40% of carbon emissions globally. In York, if operational carbon is about 30% is from the operation of houses, and then some of that's also in addition from the construction of it. So my role is a lot about how we can bring down carbon in the construction process itself for using natural materials like wood and other things like that can actually act as a carbon store, and then also as the retrofit and new build homes in terms of bringing down how much carbon they use. So that's better insulation, technologies like solar PV panels, air source heat pumps, and especially now moving into doing the retrofit of existing homes. So that's where you've got an old second-hand home, for example, and you bring that up to a modern standard to reduce its energy bills. And I've just moved jobs to a company called Place Capital Group that does that for councils and housing development companies. Thanks.
Awesome, great, thanks Ben. And finally, Luke, I can see we've got a Forest Green Rovers fan in the chat, so would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what your role is?
Yeah, so I'm Luke Gasan. Great to see there was a FGR fan in the chat, so buzzing. So I've got 2 roles at the club. So first one is an academy coach. So that takes most of my evenings, and then during the day I'm a community coach. So what that entails is a lot of the time going into schools, working with local communities, trying to spread the word of being more sustainable, being more green, what that looks like. So for the club, some people may or may not know, it's the greenest club on the planet, especially in England as well. So in terms of how we run as a football club on a day-to-day basis, very different to how other clubs run. So in terms of even like looking at now to my pitch to the left-hand side, how they manage the pitch, so using seaweed to fertilise the pitch rather than other forms. So the amount of people we work with is just phenomenal. But in terms of my role, some stuff we do, so work with a thing called PLPS, so working with the Premier League, going into schools, delivering sessions like that, soccer camps we do, a camp supplying vegan food as well to all the participants, and a Fit to Last programme. So what that is bringing in schools, they can have a tour of the whole club, they can see how the clubs run on a day-to-day basis, interact with some of the staff that work here. So that's my main role here.
Great, thank you so much. Just a quick reminder before we get into questions to everyone watching that you can submit questions that you'd like to ask our panellists using the Q&A function on the webinar. So please do go ahead and add any questions that you might have over the next 45 minutes. But just to start off, we've got a couple of questions just to kind of get people thinking about what they might want to know more about. And I'm just wondering, to kind of set the scene, firstly to ask all of our panellists, why is considering people and planet in your job role important to you or the industry that you work in? To give a bit more background about the kind of role that you do and the kind of landscape within that sector or that type of work that you're doing. To start off with, Daniela, why is that particularly important to you, that your role and organisation is focused on people and planet?
I mean, for us, people and planet is the core of what we do, right? We focus on protecting the environment, but we also do it through the people. Some of the most important things, and this is something that I was talking to Hannah as well, is that we can't only focus on the environment. The people are key in protecting our planet. And I mean, essentially, we're protecting ourselves of what's yet to come. So for us, it's super, super important and super core. We protect the communities. And when we work with businesses as well, like we work with suppliers communities as well, and so on. So this is the core of what we do. And we just like try to make it easy with technology.
Awesome, great. And Kit, what about you? Why is people and planet obviously is important to save the children, but you mentioned about kind of environmental focus. What's the thought behind kind of moving towards that more?
I think increasingly over the years, we're seeing a recognition of the inherent and interconnected relationship between the natural environment and human development. And that's been kind of sidelined in the past. It's been seen as either a conservation agenda issue or it's a global north issue, whereas now we're actually recognizing that the right to healthy water, the right to healthy air, the right to live free from risks from climate, etc., is fundamental to human development. So in terms of children, we saw this week the IPCC Working Group 2 report. It didn't get a lot of noise, but it's very, very dire in terms of the sort of impacts that we're heading towards. And our own work shows that children have a very, very highly impacted climate future. So we need to do everything we can to mitigate the risks that are coming towards children, but also build the opportunities in a kind of low carbon, greener economy for children going forward. So for me, it's about principles, but it's also about passion and also recognition that if we don't do it, we fail. So it's kind of like we have to do it, right? And also just to say, the conversation we had, the sector's growing hugely over the years. It's diversified massively. It's not just about polar bears. It's actually about the economies, the food, the way we transport, etc., etc. So it's a very exciting time to get into that kind of field, and it's now kind of diversifying across everything that we do. I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. And Hannah, what about you, coming from kind of with your background and from a different sort of industry, not necessarily environmental?
I suppose in a people sense, it is about making people happy. People only come for coaching when they're unhappy or when they don't know what to do. And I suppose the knock-on effect for the environment is that unhappy people consume more. They buy more. They buy stuff online to make themselves happy, to fill the void. They eat more. They drink more. They consume. They take substances, and they go on more holidays. They're more frivolous because they're less content. Their core it is not settled. It's not aligned with their values and what they really want to be. So I suppose there is that actual knock-on effect for the environment, although my role is not an obviously green one. I think it's about consuming and giving people, making people happy. We spend 90,000 hours of our life at work in a lifetime. So it really is important as young as you can to figure out what you want to be doing and make sure that aligns with who you are and drives you to get out of bed.
Definitely, thank you. And yeah, like we've all kind of, I'm sure it'll be touched on, there's so many intersections, isn't there, within kind of people and planet. It's really important that we talk about both of them because yeah, they're really interdependent with each other. Ben, what about you? What's kind of the focus of people and planet within your industry, and why is it important?
I was going to say, well, for me personally as well, like, I think I very much started off in the people orientated world and wanted to always work with people, and then over time kind of got into the built environment and how that can actually be kind of impactful for people. I guess it's not something I considered much at school in terms of the construction industry and how that is important towards the environment as well. For the work that we do, I mean, for the companies, it's everyone's focusing now in terms of how we reduce those emissions. I mean, I don't think I need to explain the kind of severity of not doing anything about climate change, the fact that we're already past the point of safe level of climate change. So we have to say it's about trying to get that down. And then for the company, in terms of people and planet, they kind of come together really nicely because there's kind of two strands to doing home energy, and that one of that is that you're reducing carbon emissions, and that's helpful for the planet. But also by doing that, you reduce people's energy bills. So a lot of social housing, you're looking after some of the poorest people in society, and if they've only got, £78 week coming into their bank account and they're having to spend £30–40 of that on bills, then that's not an ideal situation. So if you can reduce those bills down to £5 a week or less, then you're already making a significant help to their livelihood. So that's a really important kind of intersection between the two.
Great, thank you. And Luke, what about yourself and Forest Green Rovers? What's the importance of people and planet, and how does that affect, kind of, you said about how your football club operates differently to others, but yeah, what's the kind of...
Yeah, so like some of you may or may not know, we are like a vegan club as well. So it's kind of always tied in with each other. So with people and with planet in mind. So sometimes like the people, so like our match day experience, it's a case of all the food that's served to the fans, to fans of the players' diet as well. So all the drinks and stuff is all vegan. So obviously that's all got the planet in mind. As well, like the people, we run an ambassador scheme. So it's a case of started off within local schools, but we have got some of them in Scotland. So it's definitely growing. So it'll be a case of 1 or 2 pupils from a school. We liaise with them, and it's how they spread that message within their school, or maybe with their parents and friends and etc. So it's a case then of just using that younger audience, educating them so they're aware of how big their role is in the environment, not just us as a football club, but the fans as well. So that's one major way that we spread and link that message with people and planet.
Awesome, great. And please do, those of you watching, do submit your questions in the Q&A, or pop them in the chat if that's easier. You can ask our panelists about their different roles, or you can just pose a question to everyone if you've got a kind of more general question. I'm wondering as well, thank you for everyone kind of setting the scene of that. I'm wondering, some roles that people are doing might be new to our audience, or they might not be sure what that actually means kind of day to day. I'm wondering if we could briefly go around and find out a little bit more about what an average day kind of looks like in your role. What are you up to? What does your role entail? If kind of someone was going to do work experience or experience a day in the life at your role. Ben, do you want to go first to give us a bit more of an idea about what you get up to?
Yeah, of course. Although I regularly joke that I don't really know what I do in a day, so it's quite a broad job, because essentially it's project management. So there's a lot of very talented, skilled people with things like architecture, design, planning. You've got your people on site who actually do the construction work themselves. You've got specialists when it comes to product management, and you've got the whole building industry is just one big supply chain of skills and ability. And my job really is just kind of set the idea of what we want to complete, and then manage that process. So it's a lot of meetings with various people and agreeing those kind of what we should be doing, and then making sure that all runs to time. So it's quite a broad and interesting piece of work, but there's no one specific part of the day. So it's a mixture of working with architects, it's a mixture of working with builders and construction people on site, and dealing with any problems that pop up. And really it's a lot of problem solving. So my actual background is social policy as a student, which doesn't really have loads of overlap with what I do, and really it's kind of a general skill base of just being able to understand a problem and then talk to people about it and get to the bottom of how to resolve it. So a lot of conversations, really. My partner mainly criticises that I just spend all day talking and not working, so I'd say that's it.
Awesome, thank you. And Daniela, what about yourself? You're a co-founder of your organisation. How did that work? How did you set up your organisation?
I mean, maybe it's a little bit similar to Ben. It's a little bit everywhere and follow up, and depending on the project that we're having in, and also making sure the company continue growing. So I would say my day today is just the whole day, never stop looking at the emails. It doesn't matter what time it's at, just always answer it. I have a rule that if it takes less than 3 minutes, you should do it, or else start piling up, which is really, really bad. But besides that, just managing projects with some companies, making sure we have the partnerships in place. We're fundraising right now, so pushing through that as well, going through meetings, and yeah, just making sure we're measuring and achieving our goals.
Awesome, great. And Kit, what about yourself? What does your role entail on a kind of day-to-day basis?
Too many emails and too many Zoom meetings. I kind of break it into 4 chunks. So there's a policy and advocacy campaigns piece, which is really supporting the teams across the organization to design and deliver kind of the right kind of policy that can deliver change at government level or across other sectors that we're trying to influence. And that links to the advocacy crowd. So they're people who are kind of skilled political advocates, taking messages, trying to find supportive MPs or people who can kind of change the dynamics, whether it's about UK investments or whether it's about the global, say, for example, our development packages. So that's one. And that links closely to the campaigns piece. So there's a broader campaign, a lot of digital work, a lot of engagement, a lot of youth empowerment and work that goes on there, but they all need the content to drive that. So I kind of provide the content, right? And then there's a kind of program piece. So that's advising the country offices if they're developing or delivering programs on climate change adaptation or green jobs, how the technical elements of that work and what the package looks like, and linking across with other advisors in the organization. So that's the kind of the programs and the policy advocacy campaigns. Then there's the fundraising piece, because we always need money. We're a charity. So that's really kind of identifying where the fundraising opportunities are. And some of that might be with the private sector. So we have a quite strict set of due diligence about our relationship with who we work with, whether it's, say, for example, Unilever or etc. Or the larger programs like the Green Climate Fund, which is the largest international climate finance mechanism based in South Korea. So our engagement with that. So yeah, programs, policy, fundraising, and then the last piece is really strategy, which is about thinking where the organization goes and what it invests in. What I call the landscape and the horizon look like? So what's coming towards us as an organization? How do we respond to that? So thinking about where we make investments of our staff, or maybe we make investments of our resources, and what we need to get on the front foot for. So a lot of that is also around what's called our ESG, or environmental social governance factors. So how we make sure we're reducing our own carbon and we're doing our own homework internally to make us a really kind of lean, green international charity. So, but a lot of time spent on a lot of emails and a lot of Zoom calls and a lot of chats sometimes. So it gets a bit frustrating, but then there's also quite a lot of heavy lifting. And then the fun bit is the representation, external work. I'm an IPCC reviewer. I do work for the UN. So actually kind of meeting other people in the community and having contacts with colleagues who understand your technical issues, but also understand what you're working on, and creating that diaspora of people, which is really important for you to sort of grow and stay sane and healthy in what is quite a complex project and quite a complex organization and a very complex and somewhat depressing subject. I'll stop there.
No, that's great. Thanks. And I think it's clear from everyone so far, and I'm sure it will continue to be, that collaboration and communication is really key to sorting the kind of issues that we've got in the world, and to make the world kind of a better place for people and planet, and which is key to everyone's role. So yeah, really, really interesting. Hannah, I'm wondering about your job. Are you self-employed? Do you work for an organisation? How does that work?
So yeah, I sympathise with Kit. I have just left the civil service. I left in November. I'd worked there for 12 years, and I used to have 90 emails a day, back-to-back meetings, and yeah, in between that, you'd find some time to write a report, do PowerPoints. That was kind of it. But I make that sound really terrible. It wasn't. You know, we were really trying to. I was in a regional role around drugs and alcohol, supporting local authorities with how they set up and spend their funding for substance misuse treatment. However, I did finally live by my sword, and as a career coach that wasn't happy in their career, I did leave. And as of November, I am now self-employed, and I earn my money now in 3 ways. I'm a coach, so I'm a career coach, and I career coach online. So that's fairly straightforward, just like this. It can be anywhere in the world. I also have a business that supports organisations with being more menopause friendly. So menopause is big news at the moment. It is International Women's Day, and 1 in 4 women consider leaving their role because of the menopause. So we're trying to support organisations to be more supportive, make minor adjustments, and retain their kind of female assets and attract female assets into their organisation. And on the side of that, I also still offer substance misuse consultancy, which is going back into local authorities and helping them with their needs assessment. So as I said, they each get a budget around setting up and running their substance use treatment services. There's one in every area. And it's about making sure that those services meet the need of their local population. So you don't want a service that's skewed to a load of injecting heroin users if suddenly you've got a load of young people using ketamine. You need to make sure you understand need, and I do that by analysing data and running focus groups and speaking to stakeholders. So yeah, I've gone from having 1 job to having 3, but I am a lot happier now. But it is a lot of juggling, and it's a lot of hustling. And you also spend an inordinate amount of time on social media trying to attract new clients and writing content, and then trying not to get completely obsessed with how well it's doing. So that's the flip side of not having a full-time PAYE job anymore. But it is exciting, and I would urge everyone to be self-employed if they could be. That's me. Thank you.
Thanks. It's really, really interesting. And Luke, I wonder, someone's asked us also how or who can they contact at Forest Green Rovers to talk to students about why the environment is so important to the club. I wonder, who could they or how can they get in contact with you? But also, what does the work that you do with schools look like on a day-to-day basis? And how does that work?
I was going to say, first of all, there should be an email on the website, the community email. So send an email that way, and then they'll then distribute that depending on who it refers to. So it might be myself, might be one of my other colleagues. So that's the easiest way to get in contact. In terms of then day-to-day is similar to pretty much everyone here, I think. They don't really have a standard routine in which you abide by, which I think kind of makes the jobs we do a lot more interesting. And for me, I feel like prime example yesterday, like football's not a 9 to 5. So for me, it started at 8:30 in the morning, finish at 9:30 at night, mixing 2 roles together. So come in, start doing a bit more planning for some of the other stuff we're doing. So in terms of soccer camps, we're starting that up for our half term. Not fit to last, we're making sure that those resources are finalised. Working with some other partners and stuff to make sure that the information there is accurate and relevant. Then in the afternoon, went into a local primary school in which we deliver one of our Premier League programmes. So that's Reading Stars, so it's getting young children, at the moment year 5s and 6s, to be more comfortable reading. So we try and use sport and football and the reach we have as a club to kind of entice those young people into reading. So it might just be they haven't read at all or they're not confident reading, so it's just giving them a few more resources to use. Then after that, we had an after-school club, working with them Disney Stars. So that's then the 6-chapter programme in which at the moment we're doing The Incredibles 2. So it's the first one for them. So it's acting out, lots of fun and games with them. And then in the evening, then it's on a Monday, my academy role. So that's then long day, and then early again on a Tuesday. So it's never 9 to 5, always different. And luckily for us at this club, links into the sustainability side of things. So enjoy it.
Awesome, great. And we'll after this webinar, we'll provide more information about everyone's roles and how to find out more about them specifically if you'd like to find out more after this event. I can see that Natalie, you raised your hand. I'm wondering if you might have a question for one of our panelists.
Sorry, that was an accidental click.
Oh, don't worry, that's absolutely fine. Don't worry at all.
Interesting though to all the speakers, thank you.
No, that's fine. Following on then, I think it's quite interesting about how everyone's roles have lots of different skills. We've spoken about collaboration, communication, problem solving, and that it's clear that one role isn't just one specific job. There's lots of differentiation between things you might be doing or tasks you might have or projects that you're working on. I'm wondering if there's any specific skills, and feel free for anyone to pitch in and panelists to unmute to just answer this question. If there's any specific skills that you think is useful to kind of start thinking about now and developing for young people, even if they're not sure about what role they might want to do in the future, but anything that you've particularly found helpful that you've gained experience in throughout kind of your educational career so far. I'd like to answer that. Kit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to say is don't be, if you're looking at the career, don't be worried about what you have in terms of skills at this point. Start thinking about what you're passionate about and what makes you happy and what nourishes you, so what's going to fill you up going forward. And also there was I was reading something about education employment into the future. It's going to be less about skill-based. It's going to be more about the ability to diversify and the ability to jump into different spaces and into different careers. So I think it's really important to think about the things that make you happy and that you really enjoy and where you want to be geographically, politically, socially, etc., and the types of community you want to be in. You can be working for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I've done that, but that might not fill you with nourishment if you're chasing the dollar-pound sign with people who are really competitive, or you might want to be in the more community level work, doing grassroots work, or you might want to be in sub-Saharan Africa. So think about the things that you really value and the things that you want to do. and then go for it. And then the other thing I would really say is start looking at the job lists, and they might, you know, some of the language is really complicated, some of it is quite daunting, but the more you start to unpack it, the more you start to find, well, that looks interesting, well, that looks, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do proposal development, but to understand the language and the trends that are happening and where stuff's moving, and you can start to gear yourself towards that. And the second thing, I said it early on, I don't have any O-levels, and I didn't finish my PhD. I have a master's, so I was very lucky I could go back and do that. But one of the ways I've got into the work that I've done is because I've just upfronted, I've just gone out and said, I want to do that, I'm going to contact that person, and I'm going to push until I find a space there. So have confidence and be prepared to contact people, and you'll find that most people will respect that and kind of go, okay, this person's keen. Let's see if I can. So I would say, you know, be a bit pushy, focused, do something that nourishes you, and don't be daunted by what you have, but think about where you want to get to. And also just think about, you know, there's so much to do, and there are so many good opportunities. So yeah, I think it's quite an exciting time to come in, whether you want to be on a private sector side, whether you want to be on a charity side, whether you want to be working in your community or at school level or in policy level or program, whatever. There's so much space. So I'll just say go for it. And then the last thing I found when I had to clear out some stuff from my grandmother's attic, it was 20 years old, I found all these job descriptions that I'd cut out when I was about 16, 17, because I'd wanted to do these things for the World Wildlife Fund. And then I realized I did it. So there's kind of like, just think forward to where you want to be and don't stress about it. Just try and make a sort of an action plan to get there. And yeah, reach out to people, network, and communicate and sort of engage, right? I'll stop there.
That's really, really great. Thank you. Would anyone else like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I actually wanted to agree with what he just said, and also mention that don't fall into the trap of thinking that you don't know enough, or you're like, maybe your ideas are not worth a lot, or maybe someone tells you like, oh, you have this, you can do that. Or for example, I have dyslexia, and it has never been of course it's a challenge, but it shouldn't be something that constrains you, or just because you're young and people think like, oh, you're too young, you should wait, or like you just go and get an experience. And maybe sometimes what you need is to be young to really think outside of the box and like take that initiative in order for you to like really make a change. So I would say, like, as kids, I just prepare yourself, really study the subject, be passionate about what you want to do, and don't like get overwhelmed with the job descriptions. You can, at the end of the day, create your own job and like create the own change that you want to do. So yeah, as long as you understand the subject and believe in your idea, just go for it.
Great. Hannah, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think it could be a career coach. She's definitely, that's what we say basically. Is like, just think about, the reason people come to me for coaching in their 40s is because they've ended up in something that they don't like. It doesn't light them up. They end up doing lots of stuff they don't like, and they don't do enough of what they do like. So when you're starting out, really think about what are your strengths, interests, values, what do you enjoy doing, and try to do more of that, and try to think about what you don't like doing. I can put it in the chat. There's a thing that by Egner Shane, which is like your career anchors, and it figures out for you, according to your personality type, what drives you, what gets you out of bed in the morning. And it's whether or not you want to be creative. Do you want a nice stable job? Do you want to earn loads of money? Do you want to be the boss? And whatever that thing is for you, that's what you should follow, because otherwise you're going to be putting a square peg in a round hole for your whole career, and you'll end up having to have career coaching in your 40s. So start off, think about what lights you up, what fires you, what you're interested in, and don't be overwhelmed by it. The thing I always say is you can't eat an elephant all at once. So just take baby little steps towards it. Do one thing every day towards your goal. And as Kit said, people tend to be really kind and really generous with their time. If there's an industry that you're interested in, be brave, get in contact with them and ask them what they do. And they might let you come and shadow, they might tell you about it, they might mentor you even. I always advise people to get a mentor. If you admire someone, speak to them, find out what it is, what attracts you to them, and see if, you know, you can channel something of them in you. But definitely, you know, be brave, be bold. You know, life is short. The pandemic has taught us that. That's me done.
Right, Luke, did you want to add something?
I was going to say just one thing from me, like, it's not even like an industry kind of thing, but for me, like, personally, it's like, don't fear that rejection side of things. Because I think, like, a lot of people, like, they might apply for something that they're really passionate about. They might think, oh, that's my dream job, so to speak. But like, then if they get told no, that can like really deter them. So like one thing like I'd say is like, for me personally, is like, I'm in my like this position. I got rejected from my initial academy role. So I went in for a trial session, got told literally 2 days afterwards, oh no, we're not interested, sorry. And I was like, absolutely fine. Obviously it was devastated, but and then a few days later, it was like, oh, we can't offer you a paid role, but there's a voluntary position. Do you still want it? And I know personally some people that turned that down because they thought, I want a job in that. So I did that for probably 6 or 7 months, not earning a penny from it, losing money through transport, and so to speak. And then got offered the community position through that, in which one of the other coaches at the academy works in the community here. So then by networking, by talking to people, by having good relationships, kind of got me that opportunity, not necessarily what grades I got, my experience before, because I didn't have much experience in this field at all, never been a community coach, so I'm still learning on the job. So yeah, for me, don't feel that rejection. And if you sense an opportunity, or try and put a toe in the door to open that door. So yeah, just do as much as you can, even if it's little or large. So yeah.
Yeah, great, thank you. And did you want to add anything to what we've discussed?
No, I'd repeat the same as them. I think we always get, in terms of like where you go in as well, I guess just in terms of the basics, we always get interns in who are quite young to work. And I guess one of the main things, I mean, I didn't get into a proper job, let's say, till I was about 25. And then it kind of moved quite quickly. So yeah, kind of don't get held back if you feel like things aren't going well. There's like, you've got a lot of time and there's lots of opportunity to learn. But I guess the only one in terms of like an actual hard skills is maybe the ones that people don't think about. The non-academic ones is there is a massive demand currently for people who don't want to go to university in terms of those trade skills, and it's really important to the environment, people who work in joinery and plastering and woodcraft and stuff, in terms of actually doing that retrofit work, and it actually pays very well, and it's a great job, and it's really like rewarding and nice. And if you aren't interested in doing academic stuff, there is a whole world of work out there with your hands and doing things that are actually very practical, that's really rewarding and good, and does go towards the environment, especially if you go into it with the aim of doing something that's environmentally focused, because there's lots of need for the industry to move in that direction, and you can kind of channel it that way in the way that you pick up your skills. So that's good. And then the other one is the one that I'm just going to, hopefully one of you will pick this up, is nobody environmentally focused ever goes into the world of farming and land management, but they're actually two massive areas that we need to decarbonise, and no one really knows how to do it. So if one of you could just crack that for us, that'd be superb, really.
Awesome, thanks. And yeah, I think it's as it's been mentioned now, there's not just one green job, is there? And that's the point of this event, is to talk about actually every job needs to have people who are focused on people and planet, and thinking about redesigning what that career looks like, or that sector, or thinking about decarbonising it or making it more sustainable. So everything is an option, isn't it? And it's just what, as Kit said, and what everyone has kind of reflected on, what you're interested in and what really, yeah, you're really passionate about and what you want to make a difference in the world about. We've had lots of questions come in. We've got one specific question for Ben or Luke. Someone is building a tennis court for their local community and school. Do you have any ideas about how you could build the most eco-friendly tennis court?
I saw this in the chat and it's fascinated me for about the last 10 minutes. So, but I'll try and keep it brief. But yeah, it's really interesting because I guess it kind of ties in a lot to what Luke's club's dealing with, kind of fanboy Luke's club quite a bit, really read up on him before. And it's that challenge of trying to, like, because the whole thing is it's not just about decarbonising one thing. There's a couple of headline grabbers, but actually we're trying to get everything down to being carbon neutral. So that means tackling every single part of the supply chain. So with a tennis court, for example, I guess the main things are, I mean, you could look at things like you're going to have to try and be base course and stuff. In the concrete, you can look at low concrete alternatives. Your base course, you could use recycled crushed stone. You've got your netting, which you'd then potentially be able to change for something that's not a plastic netting, but that's something that's a natural netting. And then when your drainage comes out, that should normally go into a concrete pipe, but you could feed that into a sustainable urban drainage system. So that'd be like a pond or something nearby that kind of naturally drains itself and then acts as a wildlife sink as well, so store carbon. And then you've got your, like Luke's club will deal with, you've got all of the operating of the site afterwards. So whether you've got any lighting for it, whether that's low energy, whether you could fit solar panels. So there's a whole world of things. I think you're going to have if you do it, you'd have to have a planning consultant and an architect. So I think the key thing is finding somebody who has a kind of passion around that, who can then give you advice in that area that really fits into what you're trying to achieve, because there's lots of options out there. It's just finding people who know about it, I think, and would do it.
Awesome.
So just jumping in on the back of that as well, unfortunately for me, I haven't had a construction background, so in terms of the ins and outs of it, can't really say. But in terms of like, again, what Forest Green are doing at the moment is moving stadium. So we're moving from our current one, and we're going to build like a completely new eco, what we call like the eco park. So it's going to contain pretty much everything there. It's going to be sustainable. So the stadium's going to be made out of wood. We're going to get hopefully collect all the rainwater so that can get recycled into the stadium. So like flushing the toilets, water in the pitch, etc. And in terms of then fertilizer, if you're having a tennis court, if it's a grass tennis court, what fertilizer you're going to use? So we use seaweed on ours. Even if it's like the paths, what material are they going to be out of? So it's just probably making sure that if there are any local distributors of resources or anything, try and make sure that you can find a way to get in contact with them. It might be a case of, like Ben, you find someone that is a lot more skilled than myself in that area. So there's definitely a lot of ways to do it. It's definitely a long process. It's not going to be like an overnight job. But yeah, as long as you're passionate about it and it's definitely something you want to do, I'd just say crack on and find the means to do it. There's definitely ways to do it. So.
Great, thank you. We've got lots of questions. I'm going to kind of stitch a couple of questions together so we can hopefully get through them. What did everyone do after secondary schools? How did you get to where you were now? And also, do organisations that you work for, experience that you've had in the past, potentially offer apprenticeships or opportunities for other young people to kind of get experience of that sectoral role? Kit, I'm going to come to you first, because also someone's asked in the chat specifically to you, how was your experience at PwC valuable in enabling your role at Save the Children? So I'm wondering, yeah, how did you get to where you are now? What experience have you kind of undertaken in roles, but how has it all been helpful to your role that you're currently in?
So you dropped out. Do you want me to go ahead there?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I think PwC really taught me where I didn't want to work rather than where I do want to work. If you're spending 8 hours a day with people, you want to be with people, your community, your tribe, whatever you want to call it. And for me, the values and this assumption that a proper job is somewhere like PwC that make money, and that's they're profit driven, and that's what they do, and that's that value system. And then it sort of comes down to, yeah, I mean, really putting a lot of pressure on people, putting a lot of mental stress on people to, at the end of the day, make a profit for the shareholders. And that wasn't what turned me on. So that was a good thing to realize that, really. In terms of what I did after secondary school, I didn't get any O levels and I didn't get any A levels. And I was kind of lucky to be able to kind of work my way back into doing masters, the money for that when I was older, but it was a slog. But I went overseas and I decided that I wanted to kind of go and look at and support work on sort of environment and conservation work in sub-Saharan Africa. And I just kind of pushed and I emailed and I wrote and I just kind of was pushy because I didn't have a kind of a first from a particular place or organization to help me get that. So I've kind of come the non-traditional route. But what I would say is they're actually today, and the person with the PhD didn't get the shortlist because they didn't have the real life experience. So I would sort of say that if you can, you know, connect with people in a community that you want to engage in, understand the values and the things that drive those people and the organization that you're in, and try and go and get some experience. And yeah, there are kind of internships, and there are, I just put a thing in the chat there, we have a youth advisory board, and more of that is happening. But I think it's about sort of just understanding that sector and also getting an example of experience from somewhere. And so trying to gauge that experience. And I think one of the other, I think Luke said it earlier on, you know, don't be sort of pushed down by what people expect from you. You know, you're going to have to give to get at an early stage, and that's okay. And I think that's part of the process. But yeah, I would much rather take someone with a lot of experience over someone who's academically qualified. Because if you can't get along with people and you don't understand things, you haven't kind of been in the real world, then it makes it much more difficult. So my suggestion would just be to try and get as much experience as possible. And if you get stuck with that, then reach out and find avenues and just keep exploring on the internet and keep exploring with people. Try and make a connection, whether it's through LinkedIn but have a vision about where you kind of want to go and what you want to work on. That helps. And again, as I said it before, I think you'll find you'll be surprised that good people in those other sectors will want to help and support. So yeah, I'll stop there. I hope that helps.
That's really, really great. Thank you. Hannah, what about you? What did you do after, you mentioned that you've had quite a couple of roles, but yeah, what did you do?
Yeah, after secondary school, I wanted to be a vet. So I did my A-levels around being a vet, and then I wasn't clever enough to be a vet. And then I decided I had all this work experience at a vet's, and then I decided to try and be a doctor. And funnily enough, all the medical schools saw that and thought, oh, I've just done all this work experience at a horse farm. Anyway, so I ended up, I didn't have a doctor either, and I didn't get into medical college, and I ended up doing a psychology degree. And that, I found some things in that, and then I came out and wanted to do something around clinical psychology. I couldn't afford to get the clinical experience, because obviously there you had to kind of get an internship or something to get that kind of clinical experience. And I worked from being I worked in hospitals, and then I found myself, as I said, I think working in hostels, and then doing outreach work for a local authority. And then I found myself working in local authorities, and they're really good environments for young people, because people like to feel part of their community, and it's quite nice to work for your local authority, and people do work there for a very long time, 20, 30 years. I don't know if that's going to happen in the future, but there's that thing about reaching out to your local authority and finding out what the routes in are for young people. And there's so many, there is youth work where it's absolutely everything, your local authority. So if there's a particular interest that you have, it might be worth contacting your local authority, and they will have schemes for young people that are interested. That's me.
Perfect, thanks. Ben, you mentioned that you worked in your kind of background was in social policy. What did you do after you kind of left school to get to?
I had a long winding route after leaving school. So I originally went to Leeds University and did environmental management, but I guess one kind of precaution. So I went to an all right school, but quite easy to coast at my school. So I got through it without really having developed any work ethic, and then went to university and didn't really work, and then dropped out. So don't do that. That was in the first year. And then I guess I went away after that and did lots of odd jobs, worked in warehouses and factories and cafes and bars and stuff for a while, and then really that kind of taught me that I should get my head down and do some work. And then I went back to do a second degree my first degree at York University in social policy. So I guess both of them were from a point of wanting to do something that benefits people and is helpful and useful. Although I wasn't really sure what the jobs were at the end of either of them. I guess kind of in a similar position where it's hard to know what actual jobs look like if you're not in an industry. So sometimes you've just got to go get a degree and then do that work as you get on in your life. And then that's when I moved. I did some internships at university, which are always great if you do go to university. Get yourself an internship while you're there, especially over the summer or during term time, and then that gets you a good insight into it. So I did an internship with the council, and that's when I moved into working in the built environment. I was originally going to be a teacher as I left university, and then last minute change of heart and became a project manager instead. So yeah, it's quite a winding route, but keep your mind open, and and don't feel like you have to rush into university. I think a lot of people who took an extra year, even if they were just working, they weren't traveling, they were just working before they went, just kind of give you some time to think about what you actually want to do rather than just jumping in there without giving it too much thought.
Great, thank you. Daniela, what about you? What did you do to get to where you are now?
So I completely agree with everybody that they've just been saying, especially with what Ben just said. You don't have to jump straight into university. I took a 3-year gap before joining university. So it was funny because I was 21 and everybody was already 17. And I'm yeah, but I wanted to be sure, if not, I think I will be wasting my time. And also be in this position where I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And the only career, I found my career in the UK and I really, really like it. So I just, I was pushing for what I wanted to do. And also, I got into Imperial, but I was never that first class student or, all these crazy things of people oh my God, you got into this crazy university. But I think you just really, really, as Keith, Ben and Hannah were saying, is just really follow what you really want to do and don't pile just titles just because you want to pile them, right? So I wanted to learn something specific, and this is why I did a master's, not because I wanted to put another title on my name. And also something that Kit was mentioning is allow your actions to speak about yourself, right? You don't have to have a PhD in something in order for you to be amazing at that. And I think like today, now that it's Women's Day, I think one of the questions that I always get is like, as a woman, what's the challenges you face within business, right? So I don't have to, throughout the years, I realized that I don't have to overcompensate or like just keep updated on something specific, but I rather let my actions speak to about myself, right? And like what I can achieve and what I can bring to the company. So just do that with what you want to do rather than really focusing on like piling diploma degrees or anything else. Just really focus on what you really like and take it from there. That would be my experience. But yeah, I took 3 years gap and I was taking it as it goes. So do I want to learn this now? Yeah, so I applied for this. Or do I want to learn this here? So I still do it as it goes. So yeah.
Awesome, great. And Luke, what about you? Someone's also asked, why did you choose to work for Forest Green Rovers particularly? Was that something that you were just particularly interested in working for?
Why I joined it, but for me, a local club is just the closest to me. That's one reason. But other than that, it's kind of started watching them as a fan. Started doing well, and then as I got more familiar with the club and stuff, you then get more familiar with what's happening behind the scenes, and it's just what they do compared to other clubs is just phenomenal. I think like recently it's only like in Premier League clubs have started copying some of the stuff we've been doing. I say copying, so they've having like vegan menus, they've been having more sustainable like packaging for their shirts and stuff, thinking about different materials for kits and all that and stuff that we've been doing for like 10 years or so. So that was one of the reasons, just how ahead they are compared to bigger clubs. It's definitely one of the main reasons. In terms of then when like me leaving school, so I found it really difficult, to be honest. So I left school, unemployed for about 6 months, really found it challenging. So I had to sign up to a local job centre where I was then on universal credit. I think for me was for someone that in school, like teachers were like bright kid, but maybe doesn't apply himself properly. So then seeing all my mates go off to university, have jobs and stuff, and then there's little old me on my own, really found it difficult. Then managed to get part-time work in retail, managed to work my way up. So by the time I was 18, nearly 19, like a duty manager. So part of the management team then, just even though I didn't like the job, wasn't a fan of it, just worked hard, make the most of it. Then to be fair, in that year out, really managed to think about what I wanted to do in terms of career path. Then looked at, as some of us have said before, look at the things you really enjoy, some of the stuff you really don't like. So I was a massive football fan. So that was definitely something I wanted to get involved in. So then again, researched, even if I sat down with my dad a few times, having a look to see what things are about, then found the University of South Wales where they were doing football coaching. And immediately that was something I was like, wow, I want to do that. Went to an open day, had a chat with one of my lecturers, and then, just went from there really. So managed to do that. And then unfortunately graduated in the pandemic year. So football had closed down. So in terms of what I'd gotten and done 3 years work for, it felt like it'd been undone really. So then it's just a case then of just emailing people, getting out as many clubs as you can, even if they say no, just seem interested. Managed to get into a local club, working with them for a few months, alongside that doing another retail job because there wasn't any paid work, and then managed to get the opportunity with Forest Green, and then we're here. So long journey, difficult journey, lots of bumps, but loving my time here now, so it all works out in the end.
No, that's really interesting, and thank you for sharing, because I think it's clear everyone has had a different route to where they are now, and things don't always go the way you want them to, or what you kind of necessarily had planned, or the kind of aspirations you immediately might have, but you can get there like by focusing, as everyone's clearly spoken about, focusing on what you really want to do and what your values are, and what you want to achieve. So thank you for sharing that. It's really, really interesting. As normally happens, unfortunately we've run out of time, and sorry we haven't got around to all the questions, but if you have any specific questions, I'm sure if you pop them in the question function or in the chat, the panelists will be happy to kind of share those answers with you. We can share those answers with you. But just want to say a massive thank you to our panelists for joining us Hannah, Luke, Ben, Daniela, Kit, for sharing really interesting insights into your careers, and hopefully inspiring some of you watching to think about these careers or other career options that you might have in mind, and where to go next. So thank you so much. I just want to say as well, thank you for joining us, to everyone who's joined us today. There should be a pop-up feedback question on your screens now to let us know what you thought about the event, and hopefully it's been really helpful and something we can provide again in the future to keep inspiring young people to think about their jobs or their futures after they leave school. The recording of the session will be available so you can watch it back. That will be on the Transform Our World website, and do keep an eye out on the Transform Our World events webpage for more upcoming events, including our Youth Summit, which will take place in the autumn. But thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully that's been really helpful.